And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast.
Flibbity-jibbity nonsense.
I thought it was terrific.
It's not just big, it's yeah.
Let's go.
Welcome, and thanks for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. I figure with Halloween being this Thursday, what better time than to do a paranormal episode? And what better topic to talk about than the most haunted places in America? But before we get into the topic of this show, as usual, let's do a quick roundup of some of the big, interesting news stories of the week. We're getting closer and closer to Election Day 2024, although early voting is still in full force across the country. Harris and Trump both continue working the campaign trail, where Harris held a town hall in Philadelphia on Wednesday, and Trump has been holding rallies and campaigning in North Carolina. On Sunday, Trump visited a McDonald's in Feasterville, Traverse, Pennsylvania, and worked a short shift there operating the fry cooker and working the drive-thru. The mainstream media has been having a field day on both sides of the aisle this week, with conservative-based networks and media applauding Trump for working with and reaching out to normal American workers. And the liberal media has been attacking Trump, claiming the entire event was staged and a publicity stunt aimed at attacking Harris for her claims of working previously at McDonald's. McDonald's Corporation said in an internal memo this week that it did not invite Trump or the publicity that his visit has received, and said that they do not endorse candidates for elected office. Both Trump and Harris are beginning to make their final pushes as we near Election Day to reach prospective undecided voters, with Harris calling in Democratic superstar and former President Barack Obama, as well as celebrities such as Beyonce, Lizzo, and Eminem, and Trump has been holding rallies and campaigning in key swing states. Harris made some eyebrow-raising comments this week when she called Trump a fascist, taking statements made by former Trump Chief of Staff John Kelly that claimed Trump admired Hitler and wished he had military generals as loyal to him as Hitler did. Harris has gone so far as to claim that Trump should never be trusted with power again and said he is dangerous, unfit for office, and wants unchecked power. Seems like a whole new level of desperation for the Harris campaign to me personally. In what should come as a surprise to absolutely no one, news broke this week of a reported E. coli outbreak from a McDonald's restaurant. According to the CDC, about 50 people have fallen ill and one has died, the youngest being 18 years old and the oldest being 88. Preliminary reports indicate that raw slivered onions served on quarter pounders are likely the cause. Funny how literally days after Donald Trump visited and worked at a McDonald's, there's a sudden E. coli outbreak. Wake up, people. For the fifth week in a row, aerospace giant Boeing's machinists have continued their strike. The White House has gotten involved, encouraging both parties to come to an agreement after the some 33,000 striking machinists rejected Boeing's latest offer. The latest deal proposed by Boeing would have included a 35% rise in wages over the next 4 years. The union has been seeking a 40% pay raise and the return of defined benefit person. Since the beginning of the strike, Boeing has announced plans to cut 17,000 jobs and raise up to $15 billion from investors to help preserve its investment-grade credit rating. Many airlines had to alter schedules to deal with aircraft delivery delays. Leaving the political world for a minute, the Los Angeles Dodgers beat the New York Mets in the National League Championship Series this week, and the New York Yankees beat the Cleveland Guardians in the American League Championship Series, setting up a Dodgers-Mets matchup in this year's World Series. Many are calling this matchup the greatest October rivalry in baseball, pitting two of Major League Baseball's biggest stars, Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge, against each other. Judge is a former MVP and a shoo-in to win this year's NL MVP, and Ohtani is a two-time MVP who will likely win this year's AL MVP. This should make for a polarizing series this year and big ratings for baseball. In our final news story of the week, a Los Angeles County District Attorney has announced he is seeking resentencing for Lyle and Eric Menendez in their parents' murders, which could potentially signal their release from prison after decades. He said he believes that they have paid their debt to society. The brothers fatally shot their parents, entertainment company executive Jose Menendez and Kitty Menendez, in their Beverly Hills home in 1989. The trial made national news, and the defense for the brothers argued that they were sexually abused by their father. They were eventually convicted of murder, sentenced to life without parole. There is a documentary on Netflix if you remember the case and if you're interested in learning more details about it. All right, now that we're all caught up on what's happening in our country, let's dive right in and discuss what and where are some of the most haunted places in America. Skeptics and non-believers of the paranormal, I feel you. I always try to approach this topic with caution. There are those who believe in ghosts, spirits, entities, cryptids, and various other creatures and beings. I've stated before, I don't mess with these kinds of things. I don't try to conjure up spirits, talk to the dead, ghost hunt, or do anything of the sort. This has always been a touchy subject for true believers, and when I say true believers, I mean our Lord God and in Jesus Christ, his Son, who died for our sins. I have seen some things in my life that I can't explain, and has sparked both a fear and a fascination of the paranormal. I love watching documentaries about haunted places, of course the wildly popular TV series Ghost Hunters, that inspired a new generation of ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, and an incredible number of similar shows and documentaries. As much as I love seeing them investigate, I love history and seeing and hearing about the historical places they often visit. I personally was never a great student in school, but the one subject that I always got straight A's in was history. Even at a young age, history enthralled and fascinated me. So I think the history part of the shows was just as interesting to me as the actual paranormal research. So let's talk about the locations in this country that are supposedly the most haunted and some of the history behind them. Let's begin the list with what most experts believe to be the most haunted place in America. I don't mean a particular property. No, I mean a city. Savannah, Georgia. I have visited Savannah a few times, and I love the culture, the food, the history, and the atmosphere of Savannah. Walk through the many squares in town and see a vibrant city draped in beautiful Spanish moss. Savannah is a hotspot for countless haunted tours, haunted houses and locations, and haunted history. I myself have been on a ghost walk in Savannah and thought it was a fun and insightful experience. The guide did a great job not just talking about ghosts and supposed hauntings, but also telling stories and the history of the people and the places we walked by. Savannah was the setting for the very famous novel Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. The book, written by John Berendt, tells the story of Brent's time living in Savannah during a sensational murder trial. It gives a fascinating view into the culture, people, and architecture of Savannah. While the book is classified as nonfiction, it is actually based on a true story. I remember our tour guide stopping us at locations from the book and describing the characters and events from it. If you haven't read the book, it's a great read. I remember stopping at the Mercer Williams house on Bull Street, which is reportedly haunted by Jim Williams, who witnesses have claimed to have seen the full-body apparitions of, walking up and down the halls. People have also reported seeing the spirit of a young boy who died from a fall and has been reportedly captured on camera images by tourists taking pictures. But the Mercer Williams house is far from the only reported haunted locations in Savannah. The Sorrel Weed House on Harris Street is a popular destination for tourists. People have claimed to see ghosts reflecting back to them in mirrors in the home and supposedly feel a draining energy in the basement. The house is open during the day for tours and at night for evening ghost tours. The Benjamin Wilson House on Abercorn Street has had wild claims of hauntings, but it is a private residence and not open to the public. There are a bunch of supposedly haunted hotels and B&Bs in Savannah, including the Marshall House, the East Bay Inn, the Foley House Inn, the Kehoe House, and the Hamilton Turner Inn. Savannah is also home to some supposedly haunted restaurants, such as the Pirates House, which I have eaten at, and I will say the food and vibe was great, and the Old Pink House. For all you bar and brew pub folks, the Moon River Brewing Company is supposedly very haunted and has been featured on the Travel Channel show Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures. Of course, there are countless cemeteries in the city that local tours will take you by and into are supposedly very haunted. If any of you saw my episode art for this show on any of my social media accounts, that is from Bonaventure Cemetery. If ghost hunting and the paranormal is your thing, then look no further than Savannah. Staying on the East Coast, next let's visit another one of the reportedly most haunted places in America, and another place that I love and have had the opportunity to visit, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. If any of you are history buffs such as me, then Gettysburg is definitely worth visiting and checking out. Of course, there's the famed Gettysburg battlefield, where over 46,000 men were wounded, died, or went missing between July 1st through 3rd in 1863. The battlefield is awesome, but I equally love the town of Gettysburg itself. There are 10 locations in Gettysburg that are reportedly home to frequent paranormal activity. The Children's Orphanage, Gettysburg College, the Jeannie Wade House, the Daniel Lady Farm, the Gettysburg Hotel, and the Hoffman Mansion are some of the structures reported to be intense and frequent sites of hauntings. The Sachs Covered Bridge and Gettysburg National Cemetery are beautiful sites that are supposedly very haunted, and in the battlefield Little Round Top, where George Washington's spirit is said to have appeared before Union soldiers to help lead them in the right direction and in the heat of battle to help spur them onward, and the Devil's Den are the reportedly most haunted locations. The Devil's Den is a rock formation where it is said that over 2,000 men died in battle trying to claim it for their respective sides. Some say it is the most haunted place in all of Gettysburg, and eyewitnesses have reported that cameras inexplicably lose power or short out. All of these places are worth the trip to visit. Whether you're a paranormal enthusiast or a history buff like me, or both, you will enjoy the visit. The National Park Service has a great 360-degree show that shows the battle chronologically that I think you'll enjoy. Next up on the list, and moving further north, is Salem, Massachusetts, home of the infamous Salem witch trials. The Salem witch trials were a series of trials from February 1692 to May 1693, in which over 200 people were accused of either being a witch or engaging in witchcraft. During the trials, 30 people were found guilty and 19 people were executed by hanging. The trial started when 4 young girls accused some local women of engaging in witchcraft, by which the girls alleged that the women caused them mental and physical harm. This was a dark period in the early days of colonization, and many say that the ghosts of those executed still haunt the city today. Some of the haunted locations include Burying Point Cemetery, Proctor's Ledge, the reported site of the hangings, whose hauntings supposedly include some of those executed, Howard Street Cemetery, the Joshua Ward House, the Haunted Ropes Mansion, Gallows Hill, the Old Town Hall, the Salem Inn, the Pickman House, the House of the Seven Gables, and the infamous Witch House itself. At over 400 years old, the Witch House is the only remaining building that has a connection to the witch trials. I personally have never visited Salem, but it is and will continue to be on my bucket list of places to go visit. Staying in New England, we can't forget about the Amityville Horror House in Amityville, New York. The Dutch colonial revival-style home was built in 1927 and was the site of one of America's most infamous mass murders and the inspiration for the original 1979 movie and the 2005 reboot starring Ryan Reynolds. In 1974, Ronald Defoe Jr. murdered 6 members of his own family. Just over a year later, the house's most famous haunting occurred. When the Lutz family moved in December 1975, they only stayed there 28 days before being driven out by reported terrifying paranormal activity. There were a lot of pretty incredible claims by the Lutzes while they were there, none of which have been substantiated and proven, but many people still consider it to be one of our country's most haunted locations. Unfortunately, today the house is a private residence and not open to the public. The current owners have even gone so far as to change the address of the property and remodel the home to discourage tourists. Keeping up with our East Coast haunts, we can't forget about a trio of infamous haunted penitentiaries. Penitentiaries are renowned for being notoriously haunted due to the violent criminals, cramped quarters, and death and suffering that occurred there. The first is Moundsville Penitentiary in West Virginia. During its 100 years in operation, over 1,000 of America's most violent criminals were sentenced here. 36 homicides took place here, and on November 7, 1979, 15 prisoners escaped from the prison. Ronald Turney Williams, one of the escapees, who was serving time for the murder of Sergeant David Lilly of the Beckley Police Department, managed to steal a guard's gun during the escape and shot off-duty trooper Philip Kessner while fleeing the prison. Williams remained at large for 18 months, sending notes to authorities and making the FBI's 10 most wanted list. After murdering a man in Scottsdale, Arizona, and reportedly committing crimes in Pennsylvania and Colorado, He was apprehended and returned to the penitentiary to complete several life sentences. On January 1st, 1986, there was a huge riot in the mess hall where a group of 20 men who called themselves the Avengers attacked guards and handcuffed them with their own handcuffs. Several hostages were taken throughout the day, but none of them were injured, but 3 inmates were killed for a variety of reasons. The riot made national news at the time. In 1995, the penitentiary was finally decommissioned, and now it is a National Historic Landmark and operates as a tourist attraction, offering paranormal tours and a museum. The second is the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Often labeled America's most historic prison, it was once the most famous and expensive prison in the world. During the course of its operation, over 85,000 inmates served time here, including Slick Willie Sutton and the iconic Scarface, Al Capone. The prison was built in 1829 and operated for over 142 years before being abandoned in 1971. It is now privately owned and has become a popular tourist attraction and a mecca for paranormal researchers. It has been one of the most visited and featured locations for popular TV shows such as Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Most Haunted Live. People there have reported hearing strange noises, feeling cold spots, seeing apparitions and orbs, and even being touched or scratched. 2 of the most reportedly haunted areas of the prison are the solitary confinement cells and the notorious cell block known as the Cell Block of Death Row. In 1942, then Pennsylvania Governor Gifford Pinchot, whose cat had allegedly been killed by a dog named Pep, sentenced Pep to life in Eastern State. The dog even had a prisoner number and a mugshot taken. The penitentiary was supposed to be designed as a humane alternative to crowded prisons, but inmates were frequently tortured there. Prisoners were dunked in freezing water in the winter months, strapped to chairs for days, and even had their tongues chained to their wrists. It's no wonder that it is one of the most reportedly haunted locations in the world. Our third and final penitentiary stop is Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in Petros, Tennessee. It opened in 1896 following the aftermath of the Coal Creek War, a labor conflict between coal miners and the state prison system, and operated all the way until 2009. The prison is now privately owned and currently operates as a tourist attraction offering tours, events, concerts, and has a restaurant and distillery. The original structure was made of wood and built by prisoner labor. In 1920, it was replaced with a castle-like building made of stone mined by prisoners from a quarry located right there on the property. It is renowned for its location and design being nearly impossible to escape due to its rugged terrain and remote location. One of the only successful escape attempts was by its most famous prisoner, James Earl Ray, who killed Martin Luther King. Ray escaped with 6 other inmates by climbing over a fence, but was captured 58 hours later, about 8.5 miles from the prison. People here have claimed to have been touched, growled at, and shoved, and have reported shadows, disembodied voices, and seeing apparitions. Brushy Mountain is definitely on my short list of places to visit. For our next stop and final East Coast stop, let's head to sunny Florida and the St. Augustine Lighthouse. Lighthouses are frequently known for being notoriously haunted locations due to their isolation and often tragic history associated with them. The St. Augustine Lighthouse is the oldest and reportedly most haunted lighthouse in the United States. Built in 1892 and standing 164 feet tall, it is reportedly haunted by a ghost known as the Man, who many think is the ghost of William Russell, one of the early lighthouse keepers, as well as the 2 daughters of the Hezekiah Pittee, who was overseeing construction of the lighthouse when his 2 daughters were killed in a tragic accident. The girls were playing one day on a rail cart that the construction crew used to move supplies from the pier to the lighthouse when the cart came off its tracks into the water below. Both girls were assumed swept out to sea. Visitors report hearing giggles from girls playing in the night and seeing dirty children's footprints the next morning after no one has been in the lighthouse. There is also a reported spirit known as the Woman on the Catwalk, who is believed to be Marie Mestre de los Dolores, the first woman to serve in the U.S. Coast Guard and the first woman to command a federal shore installation, the St. Augustine Lighthouse. Visitors report seeing her apparition to this day. St. Augustine is America's oldest continuously occupied European settlement in the United States, and I can personally attest is a great place to visit. Let's leave the East Coast now and travel southwest to the Bayou and make a stop at historic, hot and haunted New Orleans, Louisiana. Yes, the Big Easy is right up there with Savannah as one of America's supposedly most haunted cities. Tragedy, slavery, voodoo, and more make for tales of hauntings and make New Orleans a paranormal hotspot for people all over the world. Founded by the French in 1718 and acquired by the United States in the Louisiana Purchase, New Orleans is home to the most historic districts in the United States and has the longest continuous bridge in the world. New Orleans is famous for its annual Mardi Gras festival and Bourbon Street. Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans in 2005 and killed over 1,500 people in New Orleans and the surrounding areas and caused between $10 to $25 billion worth of damage. The La Lorraine Mansion, the Sultan's Palace, Lafitte's Blacksmith Shop, Pirates Alley, and St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, the burial site of New Orleans' most famous former resident, Voodoo Queen Marie Laveau, are only a few of the hundreds of sites reportedly haunted all over the city. Indeed, New Orleans is chock full of history, haunted locations, culture, and fantastic cuisine, and a fantastic place to visit. For our next historic haunt, let's move further north into America's heartland, into the Hawkeye state of Iowa. In the town of Villisca, there is a house named the Josiah B. and Sarah Moore House. Well known as one of America's most haunted houses, it is now more commonly referred to as the Villisca Axe Murder House. It is the site of one of America's most brutal murders and unsolved mysteries. On a beautiful summer's night in June 1912, 8 people, including 6 children, were brutally bludgeoned to death with an axe after they arrived home from attending church services that was holding a Children's Day program. Following a nationwide manhunt, 2 trials, and multiple suspects, the murders remain unsolved to this day. In the 1990s, the home was restored by Martha and Gavin Lynn and is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The house has been investigated by nationally syndicated TV shows Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, Kindred Spirits, and The Dead Files, and was the subject of the 2016 ghost story film called The Axe Murders of Villisca. Just about any and every kind of paranormal activity has been reported here, including disembodied footsteps, voices, objects moving, and full-body apparitions. Today, the house is open for tours, has a gift shop, and you can even stay the night. Next, let's move west and head to the beautiful state of Colorado, home of the infamous Stanley Hotel. If you've ever seen or heard of Stephen King movie The Shining, here is the inspiration for the book and the movie. Inventor Freeland Oscar Stanley and his wife opened the 140-room Colonial Revival Hotel in Estes Park in 1909 and has become known as probably the most haunted hotel in the country. It is said that paranormal activity has been recorded in nearly every room of the hotel, and Stephen King's infamous Room 217 is one of the most requested and booked hotel rooms in the world. The hotel's main staircase, which connects the hotel lobby to the second-floor suites, is believed by many psychics to be a vortex or portal of paranormal energy, and there was even a little girl photographed on the stairs by a guest when no one was there. The picture was so convincing that it even made it on the national news. Ghostly piano music has been reported in the concert hall, and the 4th floor is reported to be the most haunted of all, with witnesses claiming they have had doors open and close on their own, furniture being rearranged, footsteps, and people's personal items disappearing and then later reappearing elsewhere. Making our way across the country into beautiful California, we find 3 locations: a house, a cruise ship, and a prison that are well-known paranormal hotspots and historical locations. Let's first head to San Jose and make a stop at the infamous Winchester Mystery House. This is one of the nation's strangest former residences and was home of the Sarah Lockwood Pardee Winchester, the widow of William Wirt Winchester, who was the treasurer of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. Mary lived a life of tragedy as she lost both her infant daughter to a childhood illness and her husband to tuberculosis. After the death of her husband, Sarah left their home in New Haven, Connecticut, and bought what is now the Winchester Mystery House, which back then was an 8-room farmhouse. What happens next has been fiercely debated by historians and scholars. The popular theory is that Sarah met with a psychic and was instructed to construct a house for the ghosts of those people who had been killed by Winchester rifles. This theory has been heavily debated but never proven. Whether it is true or not, starting in 1886 until 1922, construction on the house never stopped, and it wasn't until Sarah's death in 1922 that it finally came to an end. What is left today is a massive 24,000 square foot home that has 160 rooms, 13 bathrooms, 6 kitchens, 10,000 windows, 2,000 doors, 47 staircases and fireplaces, 17 chimneys, and 52 skylights. Back then, the price tag for the home was $5 million, which in today's money would be the equivalent of $71 million. It is indeed one of the strangest properties in the world. Visitors here have reported phantom tugs on their clothing, heard footsteps, seen lights flicker on and off, and seen shadows in the many mirrors of the house. Multiple TV ghost hunters have done investigations here as well, including Ghost Adventures on Travel Channel. Our next Cali stop is the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. The RMS Queen Mary is a retired British ocean liner that was built in 1934 and operated from 1936 to 1967. On May 27, 1936, the Queen Mary sailed her maiden voyage and won the Blue Ribbon, which is the unofficial term given to the passenger liner crossing the Atlantic Ocean with the fastest, highest average speed. The same year. In 1940, the Queen Mary was requisitioned by the British Ministry of Shipping and converted into a troop carrier during World War II, where she served until 1946. On one voyage, the Queen Mary reportedly held over 16,600 people, which still holds the record for the most people on one vessel at the same time. In 1946, the ship was refitted for passenger service again, and along with its sister ship, the Queen Elizabeth, proceeded to dominate the transatlantic passenger trade well into the 1950s. She was finally retired from service on September 27, 1967. The same year, the ship was bought by Long Beach and converted into a floating hotel, and on May 8, 1971, it finally opened its doors to tourists. In 1993, it was added to the National Register of Historic Places, and to this day, still operates as a hotel and also offers events and paranormal tours. It is known today as one of the most haunted hotels in America and the world's most haunted ship. At least 49 deaths are reported to have taken place on the Queen Mary, and today the ship is said to be abound with paranormal activity. Footsteps, disembodied voices, whistling, and apparitions are reported all over the ship. As is the case with most all of the places featured in this show, it has been investigated by many TV and paranormal investigative teams. So book a room at the world's most haunted ship if you dare. For our final haunted Cali stop, let's head over to probably the world's most famous and notorious prison, Alcatraz. Alcatraz is much more than just a former prison. Alcatraz Island was once a fort, a military prison, and even was the site of American Indian occupation for 19 months beginning in 1969. The group called the Indians of All Tribes occupied the island protesting the U.S. government's termination policy and the broader plight of Native Americans. Before that, the island previously had been a military fortification and military prison. In 1934, it was converted into a federal penitentiary, which is best known for to this day. From 1934 to 1963, Alcatraz Island housed some of the most intriguing and famous criminals in American history, including Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, James Whitey Bulger, Mickey Cohen, and Alvin Karpis. While Alcatraz is well known for its famous inmates, there were over 1,576 prisoners incarcerated there, most of whom refused to conform to federal rules and regulations at other federal prisons, or were considered too violent, too dangerous, or escape risks, and were sent there for those reasons. It is said that Alcatraz prisoners had only 4 rights: food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. Everything else was a privilege. Over the course of the 29 years the prison operated, there were 14 separate escape attempts, but it is only the trio of Frank Morris, Clarence Anglin, and John Anglin that were successful and probably the most well-known and famous prison escape story of all time. I could do a whole episode about the complexity of their escape, but I'm sure most of you have heard of it. If you haven't, there are hundreds of shows and documentaries about it. It is a fascinating story, so be sure to check it out. Today, the island is operated by the National Park Service, and it is a museum that offers tours. It is said to be extremely haunted, not just from the prison and its storied history, but also from much earlier when Native American tribes believed the island was a place of benevolent spirits, and the old lighthouse, whose keeper was found dead under mysterious circumstances. It is said visitors and inmates disappeared mysteriously. There are cold spots, disembodied voices, footsteps, and apparitions of visitors and prisoners alike. It has been vigorously investigated for many years and is considered to be one of the most haunted places in the country. I have never made it to California, but if I ever do, I most certainly will not leave without taking a trip over to visit Alcatraz. For our final stop of the show, let's head north to the Great Pacific Northwest to the famous Portland-Shanghai tunnels in Portland, Oregon. More properly referred to as the Old Portland Underground, the tunnels are a series of passages mainly underneath the Old Chinatown neighborhood that connect the basements of many hotels and restaurants to the waterfront of the Willamette River. They were built to transfer goods from dock ships to the basement storage areas to help negate the heavily trafficked roads above. They have a storied history and many legends of being used for organized crime, prostitution, and especially of Shanghaiing, which for those of you who don't know is the practice of kidnapping people to serve as sailors. Today you can tour the tunnels, and they have been reported to be haunted by the ghosts of those who never made it out alive, and visitors report hearing voices, seeing objects move, shadows and apparitions, and even feeling tugs on clothing and hair when no one else is around. The tunnels have been investigated and featured on many ghost hunting shows, including Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures. So if you're ever in Portland, stop by Old Town Pizza and Brewing and book a tour of the tunnels if you dare. I could do a week's worth of shows on the thousands and thousands of reportedly haunted locations in our country. This is just a small sampling of some of our country's most iconic, historic, haunted locations. No one really knows what are the most haunted locations for sure, but all of these locations share a long history of death and oftentimes suffering, which always seems to be a good indicator of so-called paranormal activity. I personally have been to Gettysburg and Savannah, but I hope to add Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary to that list soon, since it isn't too far from me in my home state of Tennessee. With Halloween being this week, why not visit some of the most haunted locations to lead up to All Hallows Eve? If you're headed out trick-or-treating this week, be safe and have fun. Until next week, thank you so much for listening, and please be sure to let anyone who might enjoy my content know about the show. And remember to like and follow the show on social media, Facebook, X, Truth Social, or email at bpppodcast@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. Your source for real news and analysis on politics, prepping, paranormal, conspiracy theories, and the volatile state of the world we live in. Tune in next week and every week for a new episode, and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay vigilant.